Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. Today we're going to be looking at the Memorial Day weekend, which was, as far as box office gross goes, the best Memorial Day weekend ever. And let's jump right into it and look at the top five. Now, even though the show is on its usual Tuesday slot, these are estimated numbers because the final 4-day Memorial Day holiday numbers aren't going to be in until later today. But I think we'll do all right with the estimates. First of all, these are the 3-day estimated numbers. So this is Friday through Sunday. And Lilo and Stitch ran away with the box office with a $145.5 million 3-day opening. We'll look at the 4-day openings in just a second. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning comes in at $64 million for that 3-day opening. Both are about where people saw them. They actually were going up as the weekend went on, which is a good sign. Final Destination: Bloodlines, as you might expect, because there was so much competition and because it's a horror movie, had a steeper drop, 61.9% in week number 2, but brought in $19.3 million. Thunderbolts comes in 4th place with $9.1 million over the 3-day weekend, and Sinners stays in the top 5 for a 6th consecutive week. It dropped 42.4% for an $8.63 million 3-day weekend. Let's look at the 4-day numbers for the top 5. Lilo and Stitch is estimated to come in, after all the receipts are counted up for Friday through Monday, at $183 million. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning estimated to come in at $77.5 million. That estimate was actually raised a little bit yesterday when some of the numbers began trickling in a little bit more. Final Destination: Bloodlines has an estimated 4-day number of $23.9 million. Thunderbolts is at $11.8, and Sinners is right behind at $11 million. Let's look at numbers 6 through 10. Again, these are the Friday through Sunday numbers. The Last Rodeo opens at number 6. This is the latest release from Angel Studios at $5.2 million. Friendship expanded to wide release and stayed in 7th place with $4.5 million, a 227% increase. Not surprising because it went from 60 theaters to over 1,000. A Minecraft Movie is in 8th place at $2.2 million. The Accountant 2 is in 9th at $1.97. And Hurry Up Tomorrow has a huge drop, 77.7%. for $715,000, and that number's been going down. I'll look at all these actuals and bring you updates next week if I need to. The 4-day numbers for numbers 6 through 10 have The Last Rodeo opening at $6.2 million, followed by Friendship at $5.7 million, A Minecraft Movie at $2.8 million, The Accountant 2 at $2.5 million, and Hurry Up Tomorrow at $860,000. Dropping out of the top 10 this week, we have 3 movies. Until Dawn is out after 4 weeks, Clown in a Cornfield out after 2 weeks, and then the limited presentation of Kiki's Delivery Service as part of Studio Ghibli Fest is out after 1 week. And looking at the biggest theater count changes going into Memorial Day weekend, Shadow Force basically dropped entirely out of release. It lost 2,114 theaters. It's now in only 56. A Minecraft Movie had its first big drop, 1,270 theaters gone. It's still in over 2,000. The Accountant 2 also with a big drop, just over 1,200 theaters. It's also in about 2,000 theaters nationwide. Friendship added 995 theaters to bring its total up to 1,055. And we saw the first sizable drop from Sinners at 886, although it is still in over 2,600 theaters nationwide. This is what I like to call the road to recovery. The blue line is the weekend average for 2015 to 2019. The red line is the weekend average for 2021 to 2024. And this is what exhibitors want to see. The dotted black line is the weekend total for this past weekend. And you can see that we skyrocketed not only way above where we have been the last few years, but also way above where we traditionally have been on this weekend. This is what they want to see. It helps when you have 2 movies that people want to go to, some holdovers that are doing well, like Sinners and like A Minecraft Movie, Thunderbolts still bringing people in, Final Destination. But yeah, a total of over right now $250 million all in for all of the movies that played at the box office this past weekend. This was a great turnout for Memorial Day. There was also bad weather in a lot of places across the United States that probably helped to boost movie attendance because there were fewer people that were out doing barbecues and everything else. But really, it was driven by movies that people wanted to see, and Lilo and Stitch was driving that ship. When we look at the top Memorial Day openings of all time for the 4-day weekend, Lilo and Stitch is the new record holder. I talked about on the show last week how back in 2002, Tom Cruise's Minority Report just barely beat out Lilo and Stitch for number 1 at the box office. Well, 23 years later, Lilo and Stitch said, you know what? I'm not just going to take your weekend. I'm going to take your record because it drops Top Gun Maverick down to number 2. Everything else takes a step back. Solo is now out of the top 10 all-time Memorial Day weekend openers. If you adjust for inflation, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End still holds the record at $216.2 million, followed by X-Men: The Last Stand. And Lilo and Stitch comes in 4th place, just behind Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and just ahead of the opening of The Lost World, Jurassic Park, back in 1997. And just to put this weekend in a little bit of perspective, if you'll remember, last year we had one of the worst Memorial Day weekends at the box office ever. This year we had the best, and the best way of really showing this is to look at last year's Memorial Day box office versus this year's. Last year, all movies, every single movie that reported grosses combined, made $132.2 million. That includes Furiosa, which was opening that weekend, the Garfield movie, which is opening that weekend, Fall Guy, If, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, all holdovers. This year, Lilo and Stitch outgrossed all of the movies from last year by itself at $183 million. Again, that's just how much better Memorial Day was this year versus last year. Lilo and Stitch also had the second best domestic opening weekend of the year. Remember, this is just the Friday through Sunday window, so it doesn't count the money that came in on Monday, but it came in less than $20 million behind a Minecraft movie, and of course it's way over if you count all 4 days. Mission Impossible also putting up the 5th best opening weekend of the year, a little bit behind Thunderbolts, about $10 million, but ahead of Final Destination Bloodlines, which just hit this chart last week. And even when you remove Memorial Day from it, Stitch had an impressive Friday through Sunday opening. I picked that movie, spoiler alert, as my number 1 movie as far as domestic box office gross this summer. But there is a lot of summer still to go. We're not even at the end of May yet. So my member poll question for this week, if you're a member of the channel, you can vote on this right now, is which movie do you think has the best chance of beating Lilo and Stitch's opening weekend this summer? Remember, it's the 3-day Friday through Sunday number. You can leave your pick in the comments of the member poll, which should be up right now. And if you want to, you can select Lilo and Stitch to be the highest opener. You can say, that's it, we've seen the highest opener of the summer. If you do see your pick in the comments, please consider upvoting instead of leaving your own separate comment. It just helps to make the results a little bit easier to process. And the 5 picks with the most upvotes will be revealed next week. I will reveal the results of this past week's member poll in just a few minutes. Quickly, before we leave Lilo and Stitch, I also wanted to note how it stands up against other Disney animated film remake openings. It is 3rd all time behind The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, over $40 million ahead of the number 4 film, The Jungle Book. And The Jungle Book, Lilo and Stitch, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King are also the only 4 Disney animated remakes that have opened to over $100 million at the box office. The Little Mermaid rounds out the top 5, and Snow White gets pushed to the brink already at number 10. Now, for those of you that are wondering, Alice in Wonderland is not on this list because it's not a remake, it's a sequel to or reimagining of the Disney film, but Maleficent is on this list because it is partially a direct remake of Sleeping Beauty. So Lilo and Stitch grabbed all the headlines, but Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning was a solid number 2 at the box office this past weekend. So let's look at where it fits as far as the rest of the films in the franchise. And unadjusted for inflation, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning set a franchise record for opening weekend at $64 million. However, you have to keep in mind that the Mission Impossible movies all have very odd release structures. Mission Impossible Fallout, which was number 2, came out on a Friday. However, Mission Impossible 2, which is in 3rd place, was released on a Wednesday. Rogue Nation in 4th place had a traditional Friday release, but Dead Reckoning in 5th place, which opened to $54.6 million, opened on Wednesday, so the Wednesday-Thursday grosses aren't counted. Mission Impossible 3 opened on a Friday, but the first Mission Impossible opened on Wednesday, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol had a wacky release schedule. It had a week of IMAX exclusive play, then it opened in wide release on Wednesday, and then its 3-day wide opening on Friday fell into that weird Christmassy vortex where grosses are lower than usual. That's why Ghost Protocol's numbers are so much smaller and why you can't just look at the 3-day opening weekends all the time. If you were to adjust for inflation, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is 6th out of 8 of the Mission Impossible movies. It comes in ahead of Dead Reckoning and Ghost Protocol, although again, both of those movies open on Wednesday. And it comes in behind Rogue Nation, Mission Impossible 3, Mission Impossible Fallout, the first film, and then Mission Impossible 2, which actually has the highest domestic opening weekend of all of the films, despite the fact that it opened on Wednesday at $107.7 million. And that leads us to our Charts with Dan trivia question for this week. How many $100 million opening weekends does Tom Cruise have in his career, unadjusted for inflation? Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning didn't get there this past weekend, but he's been making movies for a very long time. How many have opened to over $100 million? And the answer, surprisingly, is one. Top Gun Maverick, $126.7 million, the only $100+ million opener in Tom Cruise's career if you don't adjust for inflation. These are the top 10 Tom Cruise openings domestically. Top Gun Maverick's at number 1, and then way behind it we have War of the Worlds, although that was another Wednesday opener. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is his third biggest opening weekend career-wise. Then we have Mission Impossible Fallout, Mission Impossible 2, Rogue Nation, Dead Reckoning Part 1, Mission Impossible 3, the first Mission Impossible film, and then Oblivion rounding out the top 10. If you were to adjust for inflation, Interview with the Vampire and The Firm would go into this top 10 list, but 5 of the 10 would still be Mission Impossible movies. And I've seen a lot of people talking online about the fact that this was a solid opening, although maybe not if you compare it to how much money The Final Reckoning costs to make. But people have said, well, Tom Cruise, they say he's the last movie star, but Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning wasn't even close, and these movies have been declining a bit box office-wise. So why do people say that? Why do they keep calling him the last movie star? And for me, it's not necessarily about looking at just Mission Impossible, because his career is more than that. It's about looking with a bit of a wider lens. So I want to show you Tom Cruise's highest grossing films when you adjust for inflation. And when you do that, you can see that his highest grossing film, of course, is Top Gun Maverick. Then we have Top Gun, followed by Rain Man, Mission Impossible 2, War of the Worlds, the first Mission Impossible film, The Firm, A Few Good Men, Jerry Maguire, and then Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. So of his 10 highest earning films across his career, adjusted for inflation, 3 of them are Mission Impossible movies, but you also have 2 Top Gun movies, you have an original drama, you have a Aaron Sorkin play adaptation, a John Grisham novel adaptation, a remake of War of the Worlds, Jerry Maguire, which is an original film. And the most impressive thing for me is that 2 of these movies are from the 1980s, 4 are from the 90s, 2 are from the 2000s, 1's from the 2010s, and 1 is from this decade, which means that Tom Cruise has produced at least 1 top 10 all-time personal grosser in each of the last 5 decades. And that for me is what makes the difference, because I do still consider Tom Cruise to be a big movie star. Now, I do think that he's invested a little bit too heavily in the Mission Impossible franchise, both as far as how much they cost to make and just his own career path. But the reason that people still talk about Tom Cruise as being a huge star is that he has been so consistent and just delivered the biggest hit of his career only 3 years ago. It takes more than just one franchise to determine what a movie star is, and Tom Cruise is one of those rare stars that has actually been able to maintain a career consistently across the decades. That, I think, is what makes a movie star. Moving on from Mission Impossible, Final Destination is also putting up some impressive numbers. These are the highest grossing films domestically for the Final Destination franchise, and Final Destination Bloodlines is now easily the highest grossing film in franchise history. But it's not just unadjusted for inflation. When you do adjust for inflation, you can see that it is now about $5 million behind the first film and The Final Destination to become the highest grossing franchise film, inflation adjusted. So it's going to be number 1 on that list by a pretty large margin. And we'll see where it stands worldwide in just a few minutes. Last week on the show, I asked members here on the channel what their least favorite horror franchise was that began in the year 2000 or after. I already knew what their favorite was. They voted for A Quiet Place, which we talked about on last week's show. And their least favorite, I've got to be honest, I couldn't be more proud than if my own kids had said this, and I don't even have kids. By a large margin, the members here on the channel voted Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey as their least favorite horror franchise that began in the year 2000 or afterwards. 40 votes, over double the number 2 vote getter, which was Paranormal Activity. It surprised me that Paranormal Activity was this high with 18 votes. Then we had Human Centipede with 16 votes, Saw with 12 votes, and Hostel rounding out the top 5 with 9 votes. It's interesting, especially with Paranormal Activity and Saw. Those were two very acclaimed first films in a franchise, but it's obvious they quickly wore out their welcome with the people that were watching. Thunderbolts is still a top 5 film, but it is not quickly running up the charts for the MCU. When you look at the grosses unadjusted for inflation, it is still number 33 out of 36. These are just the top 35. The Marvels is off of the chart. And it is close to overtaking Captain America: The First Avenger, but the question really is it going to hit that $200 million mark to get above Captain America: Brave New World, which came out earlier this year? So again, we're just not seeing explosive growth or really impressive staying power from Thunderbolts. When you do adjust for inflation, Thunderbolts is still number 35 out of 36, about $9 million behind Eternals. So still trying to work its way up off the bottom of this list. Also, I mentioned that Sinners is still a top 5 film. It is now the 4th highest grossing horror film of all time domestically, unadjusted for inflation. It has passed I Am Legend. It's behind Jaws, The Sixth Sense, and It. A lot of people questioning movies that I included on this horror list. Listen, if I started to exclude things, then it would just be a debate about why I cut this but didn't cut that. So I drew a wide net around the horror genre. If you don't agree, then just bump up the next movie on the list. I also wanted to note that Sinners is now the 4th highest grossing film of all time domestically by a black director or co-director. It has passed Mufasa: The Lion King. It is now behind Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse. And Ryan Coogler has now directed 3 of the 4 highest grossing films ever from a black director or co-director. We've got so much more to get to this week, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsor for today's show. This video is brought to you by Square. Once or twice a week, I meet up with my buddy at the local brewery, which is always packed. And if you've ever tried to pay at a bar, you know it can be a hassle. But there, it's always a breeze because they use Square. I pay right at the terminal at the bar, or they bring a handheld payment device right to me at the table. It keeps the drinks flowing and everybody happy. You've probably used Square and didn't even know it. All you have to do is pull out your phone and pay within seconds. And for business owners, it's invaluable because Square allows you to actually run your business instead of being stuck at the register. Square isn't just for brick and mortar businesses. You can operate online or in person across several different locations, and Square can also help track sales and inventory. I've tried helping with merch sales before without using Square, and it's a mess. With Square, you can accept all major credit cards and payment methods, including Google Pay and Apple Pay, and it does what a good service should do. It makes your life easier. If you're a new business owner or one that's looking to grow, Square has all the tools that you need and keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business right now without any long-term commitments. And why wait? Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/Dan. That's SQUARE.com/GO/Dan. So that's what was going on Memorial Day here stateside. Let's look at the top 5 films internationally, and Lilo and Stitch lit up the box office around the world too. It was the number 1 movie internationally with a $158.7 million opening weekend. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning comes in at $127 million, although this does include grosses from territories where it opened last weekend, previous to Memorial Day, that they rolled into that opening weekend gross. I don't agree with the practice, but that's how the numbers are reported. But I did want to put that caveat on there. Final Destination Bloodlines brought in another $19.65 million. Thunderbolts brought in 5.6, and a Minecraft movie brought in 4.6. When you take those international numbers and combine them with our domestic numbers, you get the top 5 films worldwide. And Lilo and Stitch put up an estimated opening weekend of $304.2 million, especially impressive because this was a lower budget point than a lot of Disney's other films, around $100 million reportedly pre-marketing. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning put up $190 million. Again, that's kind of counting 2 different weekends. Final Destination Bloodlines brought in another $42.6 million. Its worldwide total is now approaching $200 million. Thunderbolts is in 4th place. It brought in $14.7 million, and Sinners rounds out the top 5 at $10.7 million. And when we look at the biggest worldwide openings so far this year, a Minecraft movie still has it barely at $313.4 million. Again, this is just Friday through Sunday. If Lilo and Stitch hadn't opened on a 4-day weekend, it would probably be number one, but it comes in second place at $304.2 million. Nudja 2 is in third place at $283.5 million. Much like some of the Mission Impossible movies we talked about, this is just its first Friday through Sunday. There was a sizable amount of money that came in before the quote-unquote opening weekend. The Final Reckoning puts up the fourth best worldwide opening of the year at $190 million, which bumps Captain America Brave New World down to number 5 at $180.9 million. And Final Destination Bloodlines is working its way up the franchise chart worldwide. It's actually just barely behind The Final Destination to be the highest grossing film in franchise history. It's probably past that point already. So Bloodlines, number one domestically, number one adjusted for inflation domestically, and also number one worldwide. It looks like it was a very good idea to bring this franchise back, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing more Final Destination movies in the near future. Let's take a look at the per theater averages from this past weekend, what we know so far, as well as the summer box office charts and the yearly charts. I don't have the specialty chart because not a lot of those numbers have come in yet. I'll report on that next week once we get those final numbers in. But looking at this past weekend from a per theater average viewpoint, Lilo and Stitch was number one. It brought in $32,993 average in each of its 4,410 theaters. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning bringing in $16,333 on average in each of its 3,857 theaters, which means that a theater owner showing both of those movies brought in an average of around $50,000 just from those two films. Exhibition loves seeing these kinds of results. Final Destination Bloodlines brought in about $5,500 in each of its 3,500 theaters. We have Snow White here at number 4 with $4,920 in 50 theaters. How did that happen? 2 words. Well, 1 word with a hyphen: drive-ins. Disney paired Lilo and Stitch with Snow White at drive-in theaters. A portion of the ticket sales goes to Snow White. That's why we have such a high per theater average. They're really just goosing Snow White's domestic theatrical gross here because I can guarantee you this was all Lilo and Stitch business. And then at number 5 right now is Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, the only film in true limited release on this chart. It opened in 61 theaters and brought in $4,770 per theater. This is what the 2025 domestic summer box office chart looks like right now. Some big changes from last week. Lilo and Stitch jumps all the way up to number 1 as the highest grossing movie of the summer already after just 4 days, bumping Thunderbolts down to number 2 and Final Destination Bloodlines down to number 3. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning opens as the number 4 movie of the summer at $77.5 million. Friendship actually jumps into the top 5 in the absence of more of the bigger blockbuster releases. Clown in a Cornfield drops down to number 6. The Last Rodeo enters the chart at number 7. Hurry Up Tomorrow drops 3 spots. Shadow Force drops 5 spots. And Fight or Flight drops 10 spots. And when we look at my predictions versus the actual summer box office so far, I picked Lilo and Stitch to be the highest grossing film domestically of the summer. Right now it is. We'll see if that holds through the rest of the summer box office season. I picked Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning to be the 5th highest grossing box office film this year. I think that was probably too high. I thought that maybe there would be a little bit more oomph behind its opening, but we didn't quite see that. It's right now number 4 for the summer, but that's going to drop as more movies open. And then I picked Thunderbolts to be the 8th highest grossing film of the summer. Even though it's at number 2 right now, I feel okay about that. I did not pick Final Destination Bloodlines to be on my summer top 10, and I might regret that because it is nearing $100 million. And if even one of my other movies misfires, then it could very easily find its way onto the final summer top 10. Looking at the domestic box office so far this year, a Minecraft movie, Sinners, and Captain America Brave New World are, for now, the top 3 movies of the year. Lilo and Stitch debuts at number 4, but it will be at number 2 by the time we do this show next week. Thunderbolts drops down 1 spot to 5th place. Dogman drops down to 6th. Final Destination Bloodlines goes up 2 spots. It's now the 7th highest grossing film of the year. Snow White is down 2 spots. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning debuts at number 9. The Accountant drops 2 spots to number 10, and One of Them Days and The King of Kings drop off of the domestic box office top 10. And looking at the top 10 movies worldwide so far this year, again, some big changes. Lilo and Stitch debuts at number 6 with $341.7 million. It will be at least number 4 by next week. Sinners drops down to number 7. Snow White drops down to number 8. And then 2 new movies on the chart. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning debuts at number 9 at just over $200 million worldwide. And Final Destination: Bloodlines, also a top 10 movie, at $106.7 million worldwide. 3 movies off of the 2025 box office chart worldwide: Dogman, Creation of the Gods 2, and Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy. So that's what's going on at the box office. Quickly, I wanted to take a look at the world of streaming, and we'll start with the latest numbers from Netflix. New numbers will be coming out today, but these are the numbers for May 12th through the 18th. At number 1 in its second week of release was the Vince Vaughn film Nonas, which brought in 20 million views. The Netflix movie Bad Influences in second place at 16.26 million views, and A Deadly American Marriage rounds out the top 3 at 12.82 million views. Those are all holdovers. At number 4, we have a new Netflix series entering the chart, American Manhunt: Osama bin Laden, which brought in 12.62 million views. Then we have Secrets We Keep, a Danish series about the search for a missing au pair, which brought in 10.34 million views. Exterritorial continues to do well at number 6 at 8.87 million views. Then we have Fred and Rose West, a British horror story about the notorious British serial killers, Fred and Rose West, which brought in 8.3 million views. Last Bullet stays on the chart at number 8. Forever Season 1 debuts on the chart at number 9. This is an updated version of the Judy Blume young adult book, transformed into a Netflix original series. And then at number 10 is the Netflix series Tastefully Yours, a South Korean show about running a restaurant. These are the 10 most watched programs on Netflix so far this year. Exterritorial moves up to number 6 at 70.93 million views. Counterattack and Ad Vitam both move down 1 spot to numbers 7 and 8. The top 5 right now is unchanged, although Exterritorial is knocking on the door. Havoc is at number 5. The Lifeless is at number 4. Squid Game Season 2 is at number 3. Adolescence is at number 2. And Back in Action is at number 1. Let's take a look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are domestic numbers only, not worldwide like we just looked at with Netflix. And it takes about a month for Nielsen to publish these numbers. So these are the numbers for April 21st through the 27th. And let's start with the top 10 most watched streaming movies, according to Nielsen. Havoc is number 1 in its first week of release with 13.5 million hours watched. Then we have Conclave on Amazon, no doubt spurred on by the death of the Pope and the selection of a new Pope, which is what that movie's about. 8.3 million hours watched. Then we have I Hostage on Netflix at number 3, American Sniper on Netflix at number 4, A Dog's Way Home at number 5, Murder at Yellowstone City at number 6. This was a 2022 direct-to-streaming / video western starring Isaiah Mustafa, Thomas Jane, Richard Dreyfuss, and Gabriel Byrne. It's one of those random movies that just pops up in the top 10 from time to time. 4.8 million hours watched. Then we have The Accountant, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, and Gladiator 2 at 3.7 million hours watched. These are the most watched streaming shows for April 21st to the 27th. First, we have the return of You, which brought in 27.8 million hours watched for the first week of its final season, followed by Ransom Canyon, The Last of Us, which just wrapped up its second season in real time, but was just starting its second season in Nielsen time. Bluey's at number 4, Grey's Anatomy's at number 5, NCIS is at number 6, Black Mirror is at number 7, Young Sheldon, which moved over with new episodes to Netflix, is at number 8. Andor makes its debut on the top 10. This is its best Nielsen number ever. This is for the debut of its first 3 episodes with just over 12 million hours watched. So we'll see if those Andor numbers are still strong over the next few weeks. And The Handmaid's Tale rounds out the top 10. When we break down the top 20 streaming shows as far as watch time per available episode, so you take the total number of hours watched and divide those hours by the number of episodes you can watch, these were the top 10 shows. Ransom Canyon brought in a watch time of 2.16 million hours watched per episode. The Last of Us comes in second at 1.3 million hours per episode. Then we have Mobland at 1.23 million hours per episode. The Residence is in fourth at just over 880,000 hours per episode. Then Andor at just over 800,000 hours. Battle Camp is at number 6. You is at number 7. Black Mirror is at number 8. Love on the Spectrum US is at number 9. And rounding out the top 10 is The Wheel of Time with its completed first 2 seasons at 255,000 hours per episode. The Wheel of Time was canceled last week by Amazon Prime Video. And those are the numbers that I've got for you this week. Before I go, though, I just wanted to flag a few things that you might want to watch either at home, in theaters, or both over the next week. First of all, today on Tuesday, The Handmaid's Tale will have its series finale over on Hulu. Then tomorrow on Wednesday, Captain America Brave New World makes its debut on Disney+. This Friday, we have more movies hitting theaters. Karate Kid Legends hits theaters this weekend. I'm actually on the road today as you're watching this to bring you a review for that this week. Bring Her Back, which is the follow-up from the directors of Talk to Me, is also hitting theaters this week, one of my most anticipated films of the year. The Phoenician Scheme hits limited release in New York and Los Angeles this upcoming weekend. Of course, this is the latest film for Wes Anderson. I will also be seeing this movie on the road and will have my review for that film this week. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in some theaters around the country, we have Peppa Meets the Baby, which from what I could tell is about 10 episodes of Peppa Pig strung together and released in theaters. I mean, literally, I can't think of anything more different from a Wes Anderson movie than 10 episodes of Peppa Pig together. In limited release this upcoming weekend and also streaming on Netflix is an animated film called Lost in Starlight. It's about an astronaut leaving her love behind on Earth, and it's from South Korean director Han Ji-won. And finally, Dogman makes its premiere on Peacock this Friday, so if you missed it in theaters, you can catch it on streaming. And on Saturday in theaters, we have J-Hope Tour, Hope on the Stage in Japan, which is a live broadcast of a concert performance by J-Hope, who is, of course, a BTS member and solo rapper. I totally knew that. BTS is on hiatus, which I also totally knew, to allow all of the members to complete their mandated military service in South Korea. But if you're going through BTS withdrawal, then you can catch J-Hope, who I was completely familiar with before researching this show, in theaters this Saturday. Also on Saturday, the season 15 finale of Doctor Who will debut on Disney Plus in the US and, of course, on the BBC in the UK. And if you are interested in what's happening on Netflix in 2025 and 2026, on Saturday night, Netflix will be having its annual Tudum event, which is a stupid name, but, you know, that's what they chose, which is going to be a live stream. If you have Netflix, you can watch it. They're going to be revealing a lot about their upcoming programming, so you can expect news about Wednesday, Stranger Things, One Piece, and a lot more that Netflix has planned. And that's what I've got for you this week. As I mentioned, I'm going to have a review for you tomorrow on Karate Kid Legends, and likely on Thursday for The Phoenician Scheme, and then probably on Friday for Bring Her Back, because I can't wait to see that one. As soon as I get back in town, I'll probably head out to see Bring Her Back and get you a review for that. And of course, if there's breaking news or anything I just want to talk about, you can stay tuned right here. So be sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you're notified when I upload new videos. Members, don't forget to go vote in that poll. If you're not a member, you can check out the description below to find out how to become a member. And you can also find out more about our sponsor Square in the description below. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.